In 1936, the King of Italy, Victor Emmanuel III, declared himself the Emperor of Ethiopia. The true Emperor of Ethiopia was in exile, and his name was Haile Selassie. The Italians had conquered and occupied his homeland. Ethiopians loyal to the true Emperor, Haile Selassie, launched a guerrilla war against the Italians. However, the loyalists were losing the battle. Then, in 1939, war broke out in Ethiopia, in Europe, and everything changed for Ethiopia. The Allied forces, mainly from the British Empire, invaded Ethiopia. On May 5th, 1941, the true Emperor Haile Selassie returned to Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, and there he reclaimed his throne as the rightful Emperor of Ethiopia. Emperor Haile Selassie had a dream, and Ethiopian Airlines was part of his dream. Welcome to Nahashon Kimemia Live, Flight 302, analysis of Ethiopian Airlines 737 MAX 8, that's the plane, by Boeing, and the trade wars. Thank you to Beverly for suggesting this topic. I appreciate it. Suggest a topic, comment below, or send me an inbox. Thank you to all my 1,176 subscribers. Please subscribe to my channel and share these videos. Do not hide a light where there is darkness. You can ask a question during the live show. Please ask me a question in the comment sections below. Emperor Haile Selassie had a dream. Like Jomo Kenyatta, Emperor Haile Selassie pardoned all the Italian settlers in Ethiopia after he had liberated them from the King of Italy, Emmanuel. Emperor Haile Selassie asked the West to help him establish an airline. And guess what BBC News said? They say that he only wanted the airline to dispel impressions of Ethiopian poverty. What do you think? Why did he want an airline? Remember, Menelik II armed his country in preparation for conflict against colonialists. He knew they were coming. Menelik II won against the Italians at the Battle of Adwa, and he won that battle with weapons from Russia. Orthodox Christians helping Orthodox Christians. Haile Selassie had seen the future, and modernization was the only way forward. Emperor Meiji of Japan saw the future also back in the day, and that led to the Meiji Restoration. Peter the Great, Tsar of Russia, he saw the future, and that led to the building of St. Petersburg, the modernization of Russia. Emperor Haile Selassie wanted to modernize his country. He did not see the need for continued conflict with the Italians, and that's why he wanted also to unite Africa. The first OAU meeting, Organization of African Union, or Unity, that was in May 1963 in Addis Ababa, which means the new flower. Today, Ethiopia has the third largest diplomatic mission worldwide. It's only second to New York and to Geneva. I mention that so that you might remember how many nationalities died on Flight 302. Again, there are 115 embassies in Addis Ababa, 86 embassies in Nairobi. Flight 302, the fateful one, had 35 different nationalities on board. 12 of them worked for the United Nations, 7 for other UN affiliated organizations. Yes, there was a meeting they were coming to attend, a UN meeting in Nairobi, but you can see the weight of the diplomatic missions in Ethiopia. And you can also see why it's easier for Ethiopia to set itself as an international hub. Because from the very beginning, it was international. Speaking of governments, did you know that the government of Ethiopia owns 100% of Ethiopian Airlines? How can Ethiopian Airlines succeed when the government owns it? I have always argued that government ownership ultimately leads to failure. Is Ethiopian Airlines a failure? If it's not, then how is it succeeding? I want to give an example. The DAG, the military government of Ethiopia that overthrew Emperor Haile Selassie in 1974. It was a socialist outfit and it expanded the airline's workforce. The idea, give people jobs, regardless of whether the jobs are there to be given. Just employ. But what happened? The expansion of that airline in terms of employment resulted in a decline in service quality and revenues. The DAG saw this. They changed tact and they allowed the airline to run on a strictly commercial basis. So from the very beginning, Emperor Selassie had a dream. Those guys that overthrew him wanted to implement socialist policies, and that affected that dream. But they realized their mistake. And they said, yes, we are socialist, we are communist, but let this airline be strictly run on a commercial basis, on a capitalistic basis. So what they did was that they got somebody called Captain Mohammed Ahmed, and they appointed him CEO in 1980. He slashed the workforce by 10%. And the airline continued with the acquisition of Western aircraft. Remember, it's a Soviet regime, but it's acquiring Western aircraft because it's strictly run on a commercial basis. The airline remained professionally run and managed, no government interference, even though the government owned it. Even during times of great turmoil and domestic hardship, despite famine, unfavorable exchange rates, which mostly comes with communism, example Venezuela, and general economic chaos, the airline managed to sustain itself. And it mostly focused on the provision of maintenance and training. Remember, when Kenyatta was falling and Chris Kirubi took it over, he pushed it towards haulage and taxis. Private enterprises or professionally run enterprises will always find a way, even in turmoil, if you leave them to do things on their own. Anyway, just to continue, there was a violent overthrow of the communists. Because yes, Ethiopian Airlines was working out, but the rest of the country was not. So the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front in 1991 overthrew the communist regime. And yet, the airline, Ethiopian Airlines, posted a profit that year. In the same year that there's another coup, it posted a profit. How? The beauty of capitalism, the beauty of not interfering with a company, letting it run professionally. The airline remained operationally independent. There was the Eritrean-Ethiopian War. Still, it did not fail. Captain Bisrat Nigatu came in during the Ethiopian-Eritrean War, and the company remained fiscally sound. What happens when Kenya Airways faces a small crisis? An example of competitive behavior by Ethiopian Airlines. Its head office is at Bole International Airport, Addis Ababa. However, it intends to build a new head office facility. A contest was held twice, first round, second round. In September 2011, it was announced that BET Architect PLC had won the contest. Another example of competitive behavior by Ethiopian Airlines. It merged into a single aviation group in 2017 that maximized efficiency, enhanced customer service, and eased long-term planning, because now you're planning as one unit. We are trying something like that, because the airports and the airline merged in Ethiopia into one. Kenya is trying the same thing, but with serious differences. For example, a failing entity is trying to take over the airports authority in Kenya. Ethiopian Airlines was a successful entity. Foreigners own substantial shares in Kenya Airways. Ethiopian Airlines was 100% owned by Ethiopia. As of November 2017, the CEO of Ethiopian Airlines is Tewalde Mariam. He replaced Girma Wake in 2011. Who is the CEO of Kenya Airways? Is it a Kenyan? An overview of Ethiopian Airlines. It was founded on December 21, 1945. The name of the airline was Ethiopian Airlines. Airlines separated. It changed to Ethiopian Airlines with no separation between air and lines in 1965. The first revenue scheduled flight was on April 8, 1946. It recorded a profit of 40,000 pounds in 1949. In 2010, the year ended June 2010, it had a profit of $121.4 million. It made profit from the beginning. It is still making profit today, during the wars and during everything. What about Kenya Airways that has never experienced war, that has never had a communist regime overseeing it? What about Kenya Airways? What is the problem? I say it is interference. So anyway, Ethiopian Airlines started international flights in 1951. As of November 2017, it had 125 passenger destinations, 105 international destinations, 20 of them domestic. So 125 passenger destinations, 125 international, 125 passenger destinations, 105 of them international, 20 of them domestic. 44 freighter destinations, cargo destinations. The most active routes as of April 2013, Addis Ababa and Dubai, Addis Ababa and Johannesburg, Addis Ababa and Guangzhou in China, Addis Ababa and Nairobi. Remember, Flight 302 was coming to Nairobi. Addis Ababa and Beijing is another busy route. Remember, Beijing is mentioned twice in these 5 destinations. So that can tell you about the influence of China in Ethiopia. So Ethiopia is Africa's largest airline in the following ways: passenger carried, destination served, the fleet size, and the revenue. South Africa Airways, Egypt Airways, Kenya Airways, they are all in the dust, eating the dust of Ethiopian Airlines when it comes to this. It has a hub at Bole International Airport in Addis Ababa. It has secondary hubs in Togo and Malawi. A hub is a transfer point to get passengers to their final destinations. People come from different countries, they meet here, and then it takes them to specific countries, right? So that's a hub, based on my understanding. Ethiopian Airlines became a share company in 1965, stopped being a government corporation. 25,000 shares entirely held by the government. Yes, it's a share company now, but all the shares held by who? By the government. So anyway, in 2018, the Ethiopian government made an announcement. It announced that it might partially or wholly privatize Ethiopian Airlines. It said that it would retain a majority stake in the airline if it went through with that idea. So from way back in the day, from Emperor Selassie up to 2018, that is the time, after so many years, they want now to sell. After around, that's 80 years, 70, 60 plus 20, that's close to 80 years. That's when they want to sell part of Ethiopian Airlines. The sale might introduce other dynamics that might be dangerous to that airline. If interference begins, then it might be over. For example, Kenya Airways, there was interference, and that changed the game, everything. Safaricom, the government has been largely hands off Safaricom, although it owns a large portion of it. So if Ethiopia government adopts the same position with the Ethiopian Airlines, just to let it be, even though yes, private players are now in play, then perhaps it can succeed. Again, non-interference is the best way of ensuring success of a company. That's a capitalistic way of thinking. I'm going to the American connection right now. Emperor Haile Selassie had asked the West to help him. Remember, more specifically, he asked the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. The United States responded. The BBC dismissed him. Remember, they said he was just doing that to show that Ethiopia was not poor. And perhaps France could not help him. Because remember, Britain and France were just from a war. This was around the 1940s. So perhaps only the US had the means to help Ethiopia. So the management of the company. The company was financed by the Ethiopian government but managed by TWA, an American company. Remember, Safaricom is managed by Vodafone. Yet it is owned mostly by the Kenyan government. I think so, but we had an IPO just the other day. It relied upon American pilots, technicians, administrators, and accountants for almost everything. For example, right now we are relying on the SGR for almost everything. However, the Ethiopian Airlines had a preamble, and that preamble stated that Ethiopian personnel should operate the airline. Yes, right now we don't have the technical expertise, but one day every manager will be Ethiopian. Or if not everybody, most of them, especially at the top, will be Ethiopian. Today, who manages the Kenya Airways? Who manages our airports authority? Who manages the SGR? By 1966, the contractual relationship with TWA was adjusted. The adjustment was to reflect the transfer of management, specifically the appointment of an Ethiopian deputy general manager. So by 1966, an African was a deputy general manager in Ethiopian Airlines. And even today in Kenya, a Kenyan is not the CEO of Kenya Airways. In 1970, the fifth renewal of the original 1945 contract between Ethiopian government and TWA occurred. And it changed the role of TWA from manager to advisor. So foreigners were simply advising, no longer managing. How long will we wait for the SGR before China becomes an advisor and we become the managers? On its 25th anniversary in 1971, the company was completely ready to continue without foreign assistance. So that is Ethiopia, completely independent. The dream of one man, Emperor Selassie. And even those who deposed him, they did not beat down his dream. Since then, Ethiopian Airlines has been managed and staffed by Ethiopian personnel. Where is Kenya? Let's look at the money. In 1950, Ethiopia got $1 million from the Exim Bank in the US. The loan was to enable it to incorporate Convair CV-240s in its fleet, right? What usually happens is this: when it comes to foreign aid, a foreign company gives you cash, right? But you have to hire their companies, so their companies receive payment, and eventually the cash you borrowed as a loan, you'll pay it back to the foreign country. So in this Exim Bank loan, Ethiopia was to pay back with interest, and it was to hire to buy CV-240s from an American company. So that company will still get profit. So the companies in America are getting profit. The companies, the US government is getting interest through the Exim Bank, right? So I'm hoping that you get how foreign aid works, but I'll do something on that in future specifically. But Ethiopia used its money well. In Kenya, we're paying interest to China and profit to Chinese companies. We're transferring our wealth to them in exchange for what? In 1957, Ethiopian Airlines had been asked to take a Lockheed L749. The Lockheed had been given to Emperor Haile Selassie as a gift by the Americans. And what did the emperor do? He declined that gift. But right now, Kenya is accepting any gift it receives from China. There is wisdom in understanding this phrase: beware of Greeks bearing gifts. Ethiopian Airlines paid $1.6 million for this aircraft that the emperor had rejected. But the aircraft was destroyed by fire in an accident. So accidents started from way back. In August 2010, Ethiopian Airlines and the Exim Bank from America, they signed an agreement worth $1.6 billion. It was a loan to finance the acquisition of Dreamliners from Boeing and Boeing 777s. Again, giving profit to Boeing, giving interest to the American government. So let's go to the American connection still now on investigation. The Flight 302 crashed. We all know that. The cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder were recovered from the crash site of Flight 302. The US urged Ethiopian Airlines to send the voice and data recorders to them for analysis. The airline officials refused, and they decided to send them to European safety experts. Why? Because in Europe they manufacture Airbus. In America they manufacture Boeing. Ethiopian Airlines was afraid that America might, mess with the analysis so as to favor Boeing. And I'll give something to, I'll add something on that as we go on. So it sent it to Europe, but it contacted German Federal Bureau of Aircraft Investigation. The agency declined because they did not have the software required to analyze the data. But the French, they say that they will analyze the flight recorders. Remember, Haile Selassie had asked the French for help in the 1940s. Perhaps now the French will finally help, nearly 80 years later. Let's go to Ethiopian Airlines Fleet. In 1959, this is 1959, back in the day, 2 Boeing 720Bs were ordered and scheduled for delivery in December 1961, ordered by Ethiopian Airlines. In December 1962, they arrived, and that was the first time Ethiopian Airlines was able to enter into the jet age. And the first jet service took place on 15th January 1963, before Kenya gained independence. And it was a flight from Addis Ababa to Nairobi. Interestingly, Ethiopian Air had built a new airport to replace Lideta Airfield. The airfield could not accommodate the Boeing 720 jetliner. The birth of Bole International Airport, the current hub and headquarters of Ethiopian Airlines, was a result of the company wanting to accommodate Boeing 720s. Ethiopian Airlines was the first African aircraft to order the Boeing 767, 1982. The first airline aircraft to order the Boeing 767-200ER, 1982. The first passenger airline, from what I'm getting, worldwide to take delivery of a Boeing 757 freighter aircraft, 1990. So Ethiopian Airlines had a passion for Boeing. It constructed an entire airport so that it could fit Boeing. It bought Boeing in great numbers, and it was always the first in Africa to buy Boeing, because it had a vision. And in 2005, part of this vision was formalized, known as Vision 2010. This is what it had in mind. By the year 2010, Ethiopia wanted to expand its destination, expand its fleet, do so many things, and it had exceeded all its goals by 2010. People can actually achieve their goals. Kenyans, are you hearing? Vision 2030. People can actually achieve it. Singapore achieved its vision. Ethiopian Airlines had achieved its Vision 2010. Will Kenya achieve Vision 2030? The results of Ethiopian Airlines, the success, they were attributed to aggressive marketing campaign and major cost-cutting measures. Again, cutting costs is very, very important. Marketing to increase your revenues, right? Employing people for the sake of employing. All these welfare benefits, they don't usually lead to a lot. Increase your revenues, reduce your cost. It's the same thing in life, even in your personal state. In 2010, Ethiopia adopted Vision 2025, 15 years vision. It wanted to increase its fleet to 120. Is it on track to achieving this vision? If it's not on track, how far back is it? By March 2019, it had a fleet of 112 planes. So it was just, in terms of planes, it was 8 planes short of target by 2019. Yet this vision is 2025. It was seriously surpassing its vision. By March 2019, it had 80 Boeing planes. Yes, it had 71 passenger planes for those Boeings, and 4 Boeing 737 MAX 8. The 737 MAX 8 is the one that crashed, and Ethiopian Airlines had 4 of them. And then it had 9 cargo planes from Boeing. Again, it also had Airbus, Europe's competitors. It had only 9 Airbus. And then it had 23 Bombardier Dash HQ400. These are the small planes, the Fly 340 planes. So you can see 80 Boeing planes, 9 Airbus planes. This airlines truly loves Airbus. And you can also see it only has 4 Boeing 737 MAX 8. 4 out of the 80. So even if it grounds the 4, the other 76 are still operational. And this, it's occurring across the world. The grounding of Boeing 737 won't dent Boeing that much. Perhaps in terms of future orders, but not in terms of the current use of Boeing. And if 737's MAX 8 don't work, Boeing can just maintain the ones that are working. So all of this media hysteria, it's just hysteria. And mostly just competition. Because the other countries, Europe might want to push it, China might want to push it because they want to compete with Boeing. Anyway, just to continue. The airline had initially planned some time back to buy Airbus A310-100 jets, the big ones. It switched to 777s because it was more suitable for its operations at Addis Ababa. Because Addis Ababa is a high altitude hub. So it required the Boeing 777s as opposed to the Airbus 350, 1000. So you can see, even when it comes to the purchase of planes, it's not so easy to move from Boeing to Airbus because there are technical considerations that you have to look at. So guys who are thinking that Boeing might fall sometime soon, that's a dream. Ethiopia placed an order for 12 Airbus A350-900s. That was, I think, yes, it was the largest order placed by the airline, I think in November 2011, just before it placed the 377. Okay, I'll just add that. Why did it place an order for 12 Airbus A350-900s? It did that because it was dissatisfied with the delays in delivery by Boeing Dreamliners. They had taken some time to come, right? So you can see Boeing was still under pressure to deliver quickly, and Ethiopia was under pressure to expand quickly to meet its vision. So here's what might happen. If Boeing might reduce its quality so that it can increase its production, so that it can meet the deadlines set by Ethiopian Airlines, and accidents can happen. Or Ethiopian Airlines might push this vision too fast, and then the pilots might commit error, pressure on the pilots and everything, and accidents might happen. I'm hoping that you get what might happen, and not just in this case, but perhaps worldwide. I'm just giving an example. So we've checked its fleet, 112, a lot of Boeings. It had ordered 80 planes by March 2019. 35 Boeing. It still believes in Boeing. 60 planes, 35 Boeing. And of those 35, 25 were Boeing 737 MAX 8. So it seemed pleased with the performance of Boeing 737 MAX 8. It was the largest order by an African carrier. So let's go to the Boeing 737 MAX 8. What happened? Ethiopia had so much hopes in this plane. What happened? So one of the 4 crashed on Sunday, March 2019. It crashed near a town of Bishoftu. That's close to 65 kilometers away from Bole International Airport. The aircraft took off from Addis Ababa at 8:38 local time in Ethiopia, 8:38 a.m. The pilot reported a problem to flight control and he asked to return to Addis Ababa. And then the aircraft disappeared from the radar screens, nowhere to be found. The flight tracking data revealed some things because communication was lost. Nobody knew what happened. The aircraft's altitude, the rate at which it was climbing, and the descent, they were fluctuating. Something was wrong. The pilot had lost control of the plane. The aircraft was making strange noises, according to witnesses. It left a trail of smoke behind it as it moved. It had sparks from the back, and fire was close to its tail. And falling debris such as clothes and paper were visible. It crashed at 8:44, 6 minutes after takeoff. Photographs of the accident site showed that a large crater with only small pieces of wreckage was visible. There were no survivors. 157 passengers and crew members had died. That's 149 passengers, 8 crew members had died. 32 Kenyans were among them, 18 Canadians were among them, and 9 Ethiopians were among them. What could have gone wrong? This particular plane was manufactured in October 2018. It was delivered to Ethiopian Airlines on 15th November 2018. It crashed on March 10th, 2019. It crashed exactly 3 months and 23 days after Boeing delivered the plane to Ethiopian Airlines. We can tell or we can speculate about what happened by looking at another crash that happened in Indonesia. It was the Lion Air Flight 610 crash, and it was the same plane model that crashed on March 10th, 2019. So perhaps there are similarities that can lead us to what happened. Ethiopian Airlines, the recent crash, 157 people died. In this one, 189 people died. That's 181 passengers and 8 crew members. It was the first accident involving a 737 MAX since the entry of that type into service on 22nd May 2017. The aircraft took off from Jakarta on 29th October 2018. This is more than after a month after the aircraft had gone into, more than after a year after the aircraft had gone into service, right? Not this one, but this model. So it took off from Jakarta on 29th October 2018 at 6:20 a.m. The flight crew requested clearance to return to Jakarta airport. Remember, the Ethiopian pilots had also requested permission to return to Addis Ababa. And just 3 minutes into the flight, the captain had said that there were flight control problems. Remember, from the witness accounts, we can tell that there were flight control problems with that airplane. With the ones from Ethiopia, right? And even with the flight tracking data, the rate of climb, the rate of the speed, something was wrong. The pilot was not in control of it. And even in this case, the pilot's altitude was fluctuating erratically. The speed transmitted by the plane was unusual. Communication between air traffic control and flight 610 was suddenly lost at 6:33 a.m. Remember, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 disappeared from radar screens and communication was lost. Workers nearby who saw the plane go down, they say that the plane had a steep nosedive angle, right? The plane had crashed a few kilometers from an offshore oil platform, right? So these were the workers who saw this thing. It crashed 12 minutes after takeoff. And Ethiopian Airlines 6 minutes after takeoff. You can see the similarities. The authorities say that the plane was still intact when it crashed into the sea. It crashed into the sea at high speed. They also say that the impact was so powerful that the strongest part of the aircraft was liberated. Remember, the photographs show that the crash site at Ethiopian Airlines had left a huge crater. So you can just guess the speed at which it was moving. And preliminary investigations into Flight 610 of Indonesia, it showed that there were serious flight control problems. These problems had traumatized passengers and crew on previous flights. Signs of angle of attack sensors, right? Angle of attack, that's come when the wind is flowing and you're trying to move the wing of the plane or the flap of the plane. So that's I think the angle of attack. And other instruments had failed on that and previous flights. It pointed to a potential design flaw in the maneuvering characteristics augmentation system, MCAS, I'll call it that. So now we've gone to a place, I think we now have an indication of what the problem is. And we are at the MCAS. That's what I'll call it. So what is the MCAS? Or what are, yes. The MCAS is a system. It's a feature specific to Boeing 737 MAX. Not found on other planes. They did that because their engines are a bit higher. So they had to put a certain mechanism to compensate for that. And this is what they did. And it is there to prevent stalls, to prevent the aircraft from stalling when the flaps are retracted or when it's low speed or when it's a nose up flight. If you watch cartoons, you remember that a cartoon can move and then all of a sudden it stops and then it starts falling. So it stalls in the air, and this system, it's there to prevent that stalling. And the stall might occur when the pilot increases the wing's angle of attack, because remember it flaps and the wind is moving against it. So if it, yes, there's the wind, there's the speed, there's so many factors that go into it, right? When the pilot increases the wind's angle of attack, the plane might stall. So this one is there to prevent stalling. And it's specific to this Boeing 737 because the engines are a bit higher and other changes in that aircraft. So anyway, let me go back. It's a bit technical. If the plane slows down or goes into a steep climb, yes, it puts the plane in danger of stalling. The 737 MAX 8 automatically pushes nose down to prevent a stall, such that it keeps moving. It's like, you know, I don't know, like pushing the engine or something. But it helps us to I think when it comes to wind speed and all those things, it's fluid dynamics. So it helps it to counteract what is happening. That's what I might say. So the system is deactivated when the pilot trims the aircraft using a switch on the yoke. So all you need to know is that the pilot can deactivate the system. The system switches on automatically. So if it moves automatically, you can deactivate it. So why didn't the pilots deactivate it? Because there's one thing. What if the pilots don't know if this thing exists? So something might automatically activate on their plane and they don't know how to deactivate it. You get the problem where the problem might be. Or they might know that it is there and it might activate automatically and the pilots can't override it or deactivate it. So two ways that the plane can go down based on this system. I'm hoping that yes. So the MCAS may have received erroneous angle of attack data, and that causes a loss of control, because when it receives that the angle of attack is too much, it's excessive, and the plane needs to take counteractive measures, then it takes those measures automatically, and it takes them without informing the pilot. So all of a sudden the pilot sees that he is no longer in control of the plane, right? So if he doesn't know how to counteract that, then things go wrong. Or if he knows how to counteract that but he can't, then things go wrong. So in November 2018, Aviation Week revealed that the 737 MAX flight crew operations manual, it did not mention MCAS. So it is really possible that the pilots might have not known that this thing exists. And from there, you can see the problem. So anyway, investigations were done. What were the findings of those investigations on Lion Air Flight 610? And this is what it found. Maintenance workers had failed to repair the sensors. So it was not the lack of knowledge that caused the problem. It was not that it turned on automatically and the pilots could not turn it off that caused the problem. It was the failure to repair the sensors. They failed despite reports from the pilot the previous day that there was a problem. The reports suggested that the anti-stall system engaged incorrectly. And remember, the MCAs are an anti-stall system. So in this case, who was at fault? It was not Boeing, even though the MCAs were not part of their manual. It was the failure to repair, despite reports from pilots, despite passengers being scared on the previous flight because there was a problem with flight control. So Indonesia Airlines had a problem and Boeing did not, from what I'm getting from my research. And actually these are findings reported by Indonesian authorities, if I'm not wrong. So let's go back to Ethiopian Airlines. We have seen that what could have happened, the similarities and all of those things. Let's go back to Ethiopian Airlines. Was this the first accident that it had? No. The airline has had 61 accidents and incidents since 1965. Remember, it started in 1945 with Emperor who? Haile Selassie. So 61 since 1965. 6 since when it was known as Ethiopian Airlines. So in total, that's 67 accidents. As of March 2019, these occurrences, all of them put together, resulted in 494 deaths. That's before this crash. And it's good to remember, not all of this accident resulted into death. I think it's just less than 10 that resulted into death, or I'm sure less than 20, but I think less than 10, right? So it's really, and just imagine how many aircraft that it has had, how many flights that it has taken. It's the largest in Africa, largest fleet. So in statistical terms, it's not that bad. But anyway, let me go to the third deadliest accident that occurred in 2010 for this airline. An aircraft crashed into the Mediterranean Sea. It crashed after departure from Beirut to Rafik Hariri International Airport. It killed all the 90 people on board. The Lebanese officials who are in charge, when it happens in your country or in your jurisdiction, let's say in your maritime area, you are in charge of those investigations. Like now, Ethiopia is in charge of them. That's why it can decide whether to send it to Europe or to send it to America. So Lebanese officials, because it had, I think, 51 Lebanese people on board. And then the next were Ethiopians, the next largest group. So Lebanese officials said that actions by flight crew resulted in the loss of aircraft control. The airline, Ethiopian Airlines, challenged the statements as biased. And there's a lot of things involved when it comes to these statements. Remember, there's a lot of money involved because of insurance and all those other things. And then there's, in terms of reputation, it's a really high stakes environment. And you really need to defend yourself as much as possible. And you can only admit liability when there is 100% proof that you are wrong. So according to the Lebanese officials, there was 100% proof that the flight crew of Ethiopian Airlines was wrong. The airline refused and said that these statements are biased, and it remained convinced that the aircraft experienced an onboard explosion. Now this is important to remember because the results from the Boeing, this crash, 737 flight 302 crash, right? It might reveal that perhaps pilots were at fault, but Ethiopian Airlines might deny those findings. Again, it might happen vice versa, right? It might find that Boeing was wrong, let's say its systems, the MCAS or something, and then Boeing might deny and say that the pilots were. So be ready for that kind of back and forth, right? But look at the information. There's a certain documentary by Al Jazeera that's passing around. I haven't watched it, but from what I've found, it's mostly based on emotions. Because when you go and you interview people who work at the, let's say, perhaps the lowest level at Boeing, and people who have just witnessed 2 crashes in less than 5 months, and then they might not have enough faith. Perhaps they're under a high pressure environment to deliver results, because other airlines, including Ethiopian Airlines and others, are pressuring them to deliver results. So they might not really be your best source of information, especially at this time. And especially when they do not have specifics attached to them. Because when they say it's low quality where? Which part of the plane? And which specific component? And that component would lead to what kind of crash? And is that crash the same one that might have happened at Ethiopian Airlines? Is it similar to Flight 610 Indonesian Airlines? So I've tried to depart from that kind of thinking, that emotional kind of approach. I've tried to be as factual as possible using specific instances. And when I examine the facts, this is what I believe. I believe that we'll find that the fault does not lie with Boeing. That Boeing, yes, could have done more to educate to educate pilots through the manuals that it pushes out, that things might go wrong with the MCAS. This is how you need to understand it, this is how you need to use it, and all of those things. But I think it's a maintenance issue, because again, there's a lot of pressure with Ethiopia to meet its targets. Remember, Ethiopia is taking over Malawi, I think, airlines, and then it's taking over Zambian airlines. So the growth is a bit too much, and I wonder, like, what's the stress on the pilots? What's the stress on the flight crew? What kind of stress on the plane is occurring? I don't have those the statistics. If I had them, then I would really give a really good, conclusion. But based on what I've found when it comes to the MCAs and then the Indonesian flight 601, the flight was mostly with the maintenance crew and with the pilots. And Boeing did an upgrade, but that upgrade, I don't think affected this plane. So I don't think that the upgrade could have led to a further problem. You get? And yes, I think Ethiopian Airlines might think about slowing down a bit and not placing pressure on its pilots too much. I don't know. That's my conclusion for now. But perhaps there's a problem with Boeing. I don't know. I'm not sure. I believe that the reaction was mostly driven by competitive factors. China was the first one, and then driven by hysteria, because nobody wants their plane to fall on their watch at that time. But with more pilot training, I think that things might be better. I also think that the grounding of the 737 MAX 8 was unnecessary at this time, but I think it was still good, because people need to fly confidently. You don't need to fly when you're fearing. And then what else might I say? Yes, in the end we'll find out everything, and that yes, we'll see how it goes. So anyway, thank you for watching. Please let me know what you think. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Thank you to all my 1176 subscribers. Please subscribe to my channel and share these videos. Do not hide a light where there is darkness. Pray for me that I may not flee for fear of the wolves.